Nick, we have a few climate-related questions and they're going to be rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yep.
Why are companies like Microsoft and Apple not in the climate fund, unlike other climate ETFs out there?
The role of the climate fund is to identify companies that will help enable the decarbonisation of the planet. So put simply, we see trillions of dollars that needs to be spent here. What we're trying to do is follow that money to where it needs to be spent to solve this problem of decarbonising the planet. Apple and Microsoft are clearly good ESG citizens, and they are clearly trying to decarbonise their businesses. So they're the ones who will be spending the money on our companies, but they're not actually enablers of the decarbonisation of the planet, or at least not pure play enablers of the decarbonisation of the planet. And so from that point of view, we don't, while good ESG leaders, we don't see them as the key beneficiaries of this trend.
What's the limits of fossil fuels as a percentage of revenue?
So in the fund, we don't have any formal limits on fossil fuels. Yes, obviously, companies that are big emitters is not great. But say they were a big emitter that was then investing heavily into renewable energy, then that would make them an enabler of the decarbonisation of the planet. And so a good example here would be Ørsted in Denmark, which was the energy company of Denmark and ultimately then has moved into this area, but still has some legacy assets in fossil fuels in Denmark, but has since moved into being the largest offshore wind provider. So we don't want to put formal limits on that because we recognise that we want to be able to identify these key enablers, and some of them will obviously still be emitters, but obviously committing to change.
You've said that climate has been a big part of the fund for a long time. How long have you been looking at this area of interest?
So we've actually been looking at the climate AOI since 2005, 2004. So I'm old enough to remember the first time we tried to decarbonise the planet, which was 2005 to 2008. And at that time, a lot of these companies that we're investing in today, like Vestas, were companies we were investing in. Unfortunately, what happened at the end of that period was we had the financial crisis. And as I like to joke, and I shouldn't joke, but we couldn't afford to save the world anymore after the financial crisis. And it's really been a decade in the wilderness before this priority has come to the top of the agenda now. And now we seem to have reached that tipping point where the revolution that seemed impossible is now inevitable, and now the momentum is just way too strong. And so from that point of view, we returned to this area of interest really in 2019 and started building it up again, building up our knowledge again, and we started investing aggressively in it in the second half of 2019.
We had mentioned that Microsoft and Apple weren't going to be included in the fund. What other companies are going to be excluded?
So from our point of view, companies that get excluded are the ones that are not enabling the decarbonisation of the planet. And so that we don't have any formal exclusions, if that makes sense. I think as this evolves over time, it's going to be incredibly nuanced. And so to give you a good example, like nuclear energy, a lot of people might think is bad, but it's actually zero carbon. And so there's clearly a hard debate that's going to have to be had about nuclear energy, and we shouldn't exclude those companies from the fund. But I think people should feel comforted that while there are no formal exclusions, we continue to really target on these companies that will enable that decarbonisation. These companies know what they're doing. The management teams know what they're doing. They know the role they play. We don't want to be guided by some sort of formal screening in or screening out process. We want to back these management teams in their vision and the area that they're trying to benefit from.
What does this mean for the other funds at Munro Partners that now that climate is its own ETF, will these still be included as an AOI in the other funds?
So the answer is yes. So obviously climate is a big AOI in the Munro Global Growth Fund today. And there are 7 investments in there today. The Climate Fund has 17 investments in it today. And so it's really just our next 10 best ideas. Doesn't mean they're worse than the 7. It's just a more broader way of approaching the opportunity and a pure play in terms of performance against the opportunity. And so from our point of view, it was a natural extension for us to build this because we'd sort of done the work already. And so that's why we did it.
And ending on a personal note, I know that everyone at Munro Partners is really excited about this climate fund. Why are you excited by the climate fund?
For me personally, looking back over my funds management career, it's really been dominated by this trend of digitalisation. starting with Google and Apple back in the mid-2000s, through Facebook, into Netflix, into the software companies and the video companies. The world got more digital, and the more we understand digitalization, the more we manage to find these great ideas. And so it was this wonderful S-curve of adoption of digitalization that enabled us to find these great ideas and created obviously great returns for our clients through that period. When I look at the climate opportunity, we're really at the start of this S-curve. And so it's almost like you're back at the start. It's a huge opportunity. We think it's probably going to be the biggest opportunity we've seen since the internet. And the companies we're looking at are so much smaller. There are many cases below 100 billion market cap and many cases below 50 billion. So you're right at the start at that returns opportunity, and some of them have got some ingenious ideas. So it's like a whole new area to look at and a whole new bunch of companies to meet. And so that, for me personally, is really exciting.
And it's good for the planet.
And it's good for the planet. The last and most important thing here is if you put money in this fund, that does exactly what our role is here as fund managers. You give us capital for us to give capital to people to do ingenious things. And if they do ingenious things, then capitalism works and they get a return, but they also solve a problem. The best example here in the last 10 years is clearly Tesla. Tesla needed, quite simply, billions of dollars to do what they've done. Us and other fund managers gave them that money. They succeeded in what they did, giving returns to their clients, but ultimately decarbonising the planet along the way. And all we're saying here with this product is it gives us a pool of capital to go give that money to other great management teams who are trying to solve other problems on what we all know is a huge problem for the world today. And that's, I think, where the fund can really play a good role in how we decarbonise the planet, and how people who invest in it can play a role in how they decarbonise the planet. And that's probably the thing that excites me most.
It's really exciting times ahead for Munro Partners.
It is. Thank you.